What's going on, everyone? Today we're here for my 2024 AFL Grand Final predictions. The week is here, Sydney taking on Brisbane, and we're going through all the details. Bit of a match preview, I guess you can say, and obviously going through my predictions at the end of the video as well. But like we always do, let's go through the last week just really quick to see the games. I don't know what's up with ESPN. Like, the app can go stuff itself if it's going to tell me I didn't tip for this game, because I clearly remember tipping the Swans by, I think it was 31, and they won by 36. So I'm going to just count that as 2 out of 2. I got the Brisbane tip right as well. I did go to both these games, so they were two, I wouldn't say two crackers. The last was a cracker, the Geelong v Brisbane game. But regardless, the two videos, if you want to see like a bit of behind the scenes of the two games, they're up on my channel, so you can have a look if you guys want to. Now, because it is the grand final, I want to give you guys a chance in the comments to do your predictions. So put down below your tip, margin, Norm Smith, and first goal kicker. And next week when I review the competition winners, I'll also mention who actually did the best in a little mini community post. And look, I'll probably give away some sort of a prize as well. So comment down below. And if you want a bit more of an in-depth predictions with the big calls and all that, I have my Google Forms down below that I'll actually submit with names this time, that you can submit for the grand final week since it's the big game. Righty, so quickly my big calls for last week. They don't matter since it's during the finals, but the first game for Sydney v Port Adelaide, I said that the Swans would in the last quarter by 20 or more points, and it was actually the one quarter they didn't win, but the game was sewn up anyways at 3/4 time. And in the second game, I said there'd be 10 or more lead changes during the match, and I think I was very close. I don't think there ended up being 10. I think there was 7 or 8 lead changes, but it felt in a way like there were more than 10. It was such a good game, but ultimately it doesn't matter that I got the two games wrong because, you know, they're the finals. I'm just taking a quick look at my tipping comp as well. So the leader for last week is someone by the name of ESPN Fan with a heap of numbers. They used their joker for this week and they got a score of 4. Pie Boy, Trim View, Chris Fear, and Alvin Tiger ran at the top 5. But it's weird enough to see so many people with a perfect score of 2 and a perfect margin of 0. Like, I don't know why we have so many people. I would have been 61st because I got 5 points off the correct margin. The thing is, right, the app's a piece of crap sometimes, and it for some reason wasn't working on the Friday night. Now right here as well for the total scores, as you can see, it's Pat Cross Dogs leading, but it's anyone's game still with one more game to play for the grand final, with the top 3 still all a chance. With, remember, look at that, 827 is his margin. So Rortwas is second, and this person right here who doesn't have a name and should honestly have a name, because if he's going to win the whole thing, he needs a name. ESPN Fan Footy Tips user has jumped up to 3rd place with a score of 162 and a margin of 804. He's tipped remarkably during this final series with only one game wrong. Swan Hunter and Ryan Chappie also in 4th and 5th with 161 total score. So it looks like this top 7 are going to be the only people possible of winning a prize. So congratulations to the top 7 currently in the footy tipping comp. Since last week was prelim week as well, we'll go over the games in a little bit more detail before heading into the big grand final preview. So the first game was Sydney v Port Adelaide. I was at this game. The vibes were high for Port Adelaide's sake. I was there in the function before the game. A lot of the Port fans joined in on the march, and I thought maybe they were a big chance at possibly winning. It just wasn't the case. They seemed quite flat from, you know, really the get going away. That second quarter it blew open, and Sydney just controlled that game with their possession and territory football. The amount of uncontested marks they had, they played their game style to a T, and Port Adelaide unfortunately were just not able to win enough of the footy. Sydney's midfield dominant. Port Adelaide's big name players just didn't step up, unfortunately. Up 4, they just couldn't get enough output out of, you know, the likes of Radaglia and Dixon once again. Another prelim final that they just can't stand up in, and it begs the question whether or not they're good enough, whether or not they overachieved in the home and away season, and in the finals, it's just a different story for Port. The second game was obviously the much better game, Geelong and Brisbane, arguably the best prelim final we've seen in a very long time. The best prelim final I've been to ever as a neutral, I'd have to say, and it was the Lions that got the job done by 10 points, but there were so many ebbs and flows in this game. I remember it took 18 or 19 minutes for the first goal to be scored, and then from there, in a way, it was a bit of a shootout. I was sitting in the area where the scoring end occurred. I know that the Cats had, I think, a 7-goal second quarter, and to blow out to a 25-point lead early in that third quarter. But Brisbane, they just continue showing that mentality of never say die, coming back from 25 points and just playing absolutely chaotic, fast, frenetic footy. Every time they go inside 50, they look so dangerous. The star players always seem to get on top in the big moments during this final series. For example, Cam Rayner. Once again, Brisbane continue their merry way. I think given what we saw during semi-final week after the games finished, this was the matchup that I wanted. I mean, it's the first interstate grand final since 2006, which I'm a fan of. I kind of wanted to see an interstate grand final. Remember the last two were both thrillers between Sydney and West Coast. You could arguably say there's still a little bit of Victorian heritage sprinkled onto this one despite it being an interstate granny. And it's the first time that the two last runners-up in grand finals both are playing off in a grand final since 1995. So this is a big redemption story for Sydney. Of course, Sydney have lost, I think, their last 3 grand finals, 2014, 2016, 2022. It might ultimately come down to who's got on the day the stronger mentality to get over the line, because we know both of these sides are capable of winning. I think this is probably the best grand final in terms of the best 2 sides in it. The Swans have been the best side, the benchmark for basically the whole year during the home and away season, but Brisbane, really since round 11, they've been the form side in the comp. They're currently on a winning streak of 11 of 13 games, with only 2 of those games being losses against the Giants and the Pies, which realistically they should have won. Those were 2 close losses that they, let's face it, choked in. But this final series, the Lions have certainly stepped up. Now, as I mentioned, the last game between the Swans and the Power, the Swans were able to gain a lot of territory in their win over Port. They very much dominated possession, and they looked at just being in control really for most of the game. And I think that's the way they want to play. They want to be the more controlled side heading to this game with a structure they know they want to play. They almost had 100 more disposals than Port last week, and I think their disposal efficiency was 77%. So those uncontested marks, just finding targets, and then eventually just finding space inside 50, and that's really where Port Adelaide were outworked. The Power just didn't have the gas to keep up with Sydney, and that's why Sydney had so many goal opportunities. They really should have won that game by more, the way I saw it. And Brisbane, in terms of the sides most fun to watch this final series, I'd have to give it to the Lions. They've just been able to turn it on in the big moments when needed. When basically no one gives them a chance, they still feel like deep down they've got the belief they can do it, and they just switch up another 1 or 2 gears. They play on instinct, they can switch the ball and move the ball really quickly when they want to, and especially that second half, Brisbane were just no match for Geelong. Geelong just couldn't keep up with Brisbane's pace and transition the footy from D50 to forward 50. They're a side that do rely on their stoppages and clearances. They're first in the league for all of those. They're now going to be a little bit disadvantaged because of what happened last week with Oscar McInerney. He's probably the big talking point in this grand final, with the fact that he double dislocated his shoulder against the Cats. Chris Fagan basically said it himself that he won't be, so you're probably going to have to give the next spot to Darcy Fort. He is, recruited as a backup ruck, and he's only played 2 games. You would think he would be the only change into the side. They're not going to want Joe Danaher playing a ruck role. It worked a little bit last week, but you want Joe Danaher to be the forward. And the thing about Darcy Fort, he's not terrible, but he's just nowhere near as good as McInerney. The impact McInerney, the lost impact that's going to have on the Brisbane midfielders, they now aren't going to be relying on themselves getting first hands of the footy. Another thing, of course, to take notice of for Sydney as well, Goulden, Heaney and Warner, when they score 3 or more goals combined, they are 15-2. When they don't, they're 4-4. So are the Lions going to be able to nullify their influence on this game? And I don't know how they're going to do that, because let's be honest, all 3 of them have been very good this final series, particularly Isaac Heaney. So he's probably the player on watch if you're a Brisbane fan. Him, probably Papley as well. He's had a really good final series. I think he kicked another 2 or 3 goals last week. So him, I think they combined for 6 the key forwards, McLean and Marty and McDonald. So they've had a bit of a quiet final series. The fact that they're firing with goals as well will make things a little bit more difficult for the Lions, but someone like a Ryan Lester, who had a really good role on Cameron last week, he's been a bit of an unsung hero. I think there's a good chance he's probably going to nullify the impact of one of their keys in this game as well. Both sides like to play free-flowing contest. They're 2 quite high-scoring sides. The last time the Swans and the Lions played was a thriller. I remember the game. I think the Lions won by 2 points. They did make it close, obviously, in last year's grand final. I know Swans got smashed in 2022, but they're a clearly better side this year, and they're going to know that they can't start games off that poorly. And they've been able to fix their poor first quarters in the last couple of weeks as well, particularly against the Power. Now, before I tell you who I think will win the game, like I have done in a couple of other years, we'll go through quickly my quarter-by-quarter predictions. So I think at quarter time, the Lions will get off to a strong start, kicking 5 goals. Sydney often have slow first quarters. They're going to really have to focus on that not being a problem in this game. Half-time, I think it's going to be high-scoring like the grand final last year. Clear skies, I think it's going to be a display of really terrific skills like we saw last year in the grand final. 3-quarter time, I think the Swans actually regain the lead. They're going to have a big quarter, and it'll be the Lions, I think, trailing at 3-quarter time by 10 points. But I think in one of the great grand finals, it's going to be Brisbane that overcome that. And look how high-scoring I think this is going to be. I think the Lions win the game by 9 points with a 5-goal last quarter. And if this were to happen, it'd be one of the great grand finals of the modern era. A 3-quarter time comeback. It'd be Chris Fagan's first premiership as a coach. First premiership for the Lions since 2003. And this was my preseason predictions from the start of the year. I said the Lions would win the flag, so we're sticking with the call here. I'm on board the Lions train because I think the way they've been playing, the fact that they haven't got a break, I think they can continue their surge of momentum. And they don't have that grand final hoodoo anymore after last week. Norm Smith medal, I think Dane Zorko, he's had a really good season, and I think he's going to have a shit ton of the footy, maybe bob up with a goal potentially, and I think they're going to give him the Norm Smith for the most disposals as well on the ground. My big call for this game, I think both sides will have their patches of momentum of dominance, so I think both sides will kick 5 consecutive goals at any stage of the game. If that does happen, I just think that means for such a high-scoring, entertaining grand final. But it is Brisbane who I think will win the premiership in 2024. I know the Swans have been such a benchmark side all year, but the Lions, I was on board them last year, and I just feel like it'd be such a good story if they can get it from finishing 5th. But it's going to be a great game, hopefully. I haven't got tickets at the moment, or at least I don't think I'll be getting tickets, so I'm not sure what I'll be doing on Grand Final day, but who freaking knows? Maybe there's someone out there that doesn't want their Grand Final ticket anymore. If that's the case, please let me know. But until then, we'll see you very soon for my next bit of content. Thank you all for watching, and leave your tips down below as well. Who do you think is going to win this massive Grand Final in 2024?